Hi, it's really an honor hosting this panel discussion for you guys. I'm Evie from TechFlow, and the panelists we have here are from very renowned projects and also from one of the very popular narratives at the moment, Modularity. So without further ado, let's kick things off by inviting each of our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves and also a brief introduction about what you're working on currently.
Hello, I'm Zon, founding team at Initia. Initia is a network for interwoven rollups. We're holistically rebuilding how multi-chain networks should look, feel, and operate along the architecture stack, the product stack, and the economic systems that tie everything together.
So YQ here, founder of AltLayer. So at AltLayer, we are building sort of the rollup platforms to provide these rollup service. At the same time, we are working closely with EigenLayer to provide a new type of rollup framework called restate rollup. Basically, help all the rollup projects to have a decentralized verification, faster finality, and also decentralized sequencing.
I'm Rushi, co-founder of Movement Labs. We're bringing the Move VM to Ethereum. The thesis is bringing smart contract security and parallelization through a high throughput blockchain on Ethereum.
My name is Terry. I'm strategy lead at Eclipse. We're bringing Solana as a L2 on ETH, SVM rollups on Ethereum.
Great. Our panelists here with us today are all very experienced veterans in the Web3 arena, and I'm sure the audience can't wait to hear about your invaluable insights. So nowadays we see that many networks, in order to be more scalable and sustainable, they're undergoing like a transition towards modular networks, modular framework. And can you discuss first why is that happening, and also how do you perceive the current landscape of modular networks? Which specific niches do you believe hold the most promising potential for sustainable growth? Anyone, gentlemen?
I can start on this. I think typical L1s that like Solana, Aptos, and Sui, pretty high throughput blockchains, but they don't have customizations. So imagine you're launching an order book rollup or a game rollup. In the past, you can customize what sequencer you're using, what kind of DA layer you're using, what kind of partners you're using. And the modular thesis really spawned to bring customizations and flexibility to different app builders and users. In the start, it sacrifices the UX, but we're getting to a point where it gets integrated, such that different modular pieces can combine together, and you have a high throughput blockchain leveraging prehistoric or settlement layers, different DA layers. So much more customization and flexibility to developers.
Yeah, I think Rushi hit the nail on the head. Really, over the past few years, we've seen only one modular landscape, which had been the Cosmos ecosystem. It was probably the first modular type of network that really, I think what modularity brings is just freedom as well as value ownership. Through this modular landscape, we're seeing the rise of app chains to a new extent that we haven't seen before, specifically because it's a lot easier to do this now with rollups, which don't require you to run things like a validator set, but you're able to have your own application blockchain where you can retain all the value that you create as an application. And the modular thesis is about how can we take this type of approach of app chains and optimize it more efficiently, whether that be improving on the execution layer like we have with Terry and the SVM or movement with Move, or it be on things like the data availability layer from teams like Celestia and Avail. And at Initia, we're trying to essentially combine a lot of these different modular parts together, and that's why we allow you to build essentially full-fledged Cosmos SDK-based rollups with any VM on top, including EVM, MoveVM, or WASM VM.
The core reason behind the move to modularity is a realization of two factors. Number one is if you have a commitment to a sequence of transactions, then execution being deterministic, the resultant state is the same. Number two, if you have verifiability of the safety of execution, it's a one of n assumption where the resultant state is now, committed and safe, right? Okay, so you have a commitment to a set of transactions. You have promises that there is validity of the state transaction function given this commitment. Then what can you do? You can outsource consensus and decentralization to a base layer that agrees upon just this commitment. Have someone just check the validity of the state transaction function, And basically what you can do is, okay, I have a base layer that's decentralized. They're going to take care of consensus and safety and decentralization. And then I'm going to innovate on the execution layer and make it real, real fast. Right? That's kind of the promise of modularity, and
How fast, Terry?
very, very fast. Okay, so we don't have exact benchmarks, but on Twitter, there was a recent benchmark where someone ran a 10 cluster SVM node, and they were able to get to like 20,000 real TPS excluding vote transactions.
So I believe like the first time when we mentioned about this modularity, I think it's around like in early 2022, right? From the Celestia people. Mainly around time, it was hyped around this sovereign rollout, right? And the people would like to really categorize the different components of rollup into different sort of layers. Typically, we see Ethereum as the settlement layer. And also we have typical for the settlement layer, right? They do the verification of the proofs and also settling all the bridge assets and the transaction after all the like, sort of execution on the L2. And then we also have the execution layer, right? Either we do these Cosmos, like EVM, OP Stack, Arbitrum, or Polygon CDK, or Move, and also SVM. Basically, on the panel, we really cover all the different execution layer. And then at the same time, as we all mentioned, right, the DA layer, because once we do all these massive execution, we must have some places to store these sort of the states and some of the transaction body for some time, either for optimistic proof or for ZK proof. So in that case, apart from this super fast and efficient execution, we also would like to have this very scalable sort of data availability layer. So that's why, like 2 years ago, when Celestia people mentioned about this modularity, is modular blockchain, or this modular rollup, they are trying to provide this scalable DA layer for all the different execution layers and also rollups. And so far as we can see, right, since this modularity like came up 2 years ago, and now we really have a lot of projects focusing on different components inside this modularity space. Some of us are working on these different execution layers. Some of us are working on basically the better scalable DA layer, and some of us really want to have probably a unified settlement layer for all different rollups or these execution, like off-chain execution layers. Yeah.
All right. So modular blockchain architecture separate the layers of DA, consensus, settlement, execution, but this also raises the question like which of these layers will capture the most value? And please feel free to provide a ranking from your own perspective.
Well, I may be biased, but say execution layer. For example, with our stack, you can have very low fees, but if a provider wanted to bring fees up by 7, 8x, that would still be like what 16, 17 cents, so relatively cheap. But like ultimately the provider or the app at the execution layer decides what the fees are, who it's distributed to. So I would say the value really accrues to the execution layer. The least value would probably be like the DA layer, because I think like most DA layers make like $40 a week, something like not very value accretive. And then I would say like settlement layer would be in the middle, where like you're still paying rent to Ethereum in most cases, but this rent is minimized when you're using alternative DA. But I'll go execution, settlement, and then DA, and consensus. You probably have to pay fees to sequencers and whatnot, which can be grouped in consensus. So if you use a shared sequencer, I'd say it's like below settlement itself.
So based on the real data, since we are serving a lot of customers and partners using like OP Arbitrum or Polygon CDK, from the real data, as Rushi mentioned, right? Of course, the execution layer. I mean, the sequencer charge most of the fees or collect most of the fees, especially after the latest upgrade on Ethereum. Once if you don't use DA, right? Even you are using the blob, the fees can be super low. If you look at the real cases, basically OP and Arbitrum, Like right now, if you send transaction, typically the transaction fee is less than 1 cent. So that's a huge like sort of decrease on these L2 gas fees. And beyond that, apart from this settlement layer, of course, like since all the L2 need to post the data, still rule hash or sometimes like these transaction bodies to the L1. Beyond that, I believe the another missing component is the prover cost. So basically, for the specific ZK rollup, and the most of the costs around this ZK prover. Typically, if you want even to achieve very low TPS, but still you need to run very powerful machines to generate the proofs as a ZK prover. So in that case, once you run some proving market, probably you can really charge a lot based on that. So that's something I believe a lot of the projects or users at this moment are missing these costs around this part. Yeah.
Execution. People are willing to pay for specific block space. Case in point, base transaction cost versus Arbitrum transaction cost, despite the fact that they settle to the same DA and have the same settlement layer, means it's all about what's on this execution layer. And I think that's pretty evident, and everyone else echoes that statement.
Okay, let's delve into another topic about value. So oftentimes we hear criticism surrounding modular network solution arise, such as concerns including security, complexity, and the perceived limitations in functionality or application scenarios. So that could potentially hurt the user interest in the native node tokens and its perceived value. So could you please discuss, like strategies for addressing these issues?
I guess I can start. Yeah, modular networks do have currently a security issue. A lot of L2s don't have live fraud proofs. They don't have full ZK coverage of their virtual machine state transition function. Some have multi-sigs with upgradability, but these are all training wheels. They will come off at a certain point. It's also important to remember that even the most decentralized L1s today rely on social consensus. And at a level of decentralization where we get rid of a multi-sig, we have governance controlled upgradability, we have live fraud proofs, then yeah, you just default to upgradability through social consensus, which is exactly the same thing that we have as what people think the most decentralized L1s have today, right? So that's something on the security layer.
I'd say a lot of folks don't really care about decentralization. If I'm trying to trade meme coins on an L2, I probably don't care how decentralized the network is, which is an unfortunate truth. But in the long term, at 10, 20-year lens, decentralization does matter. So that's why I don't really push back on optimism for not having fraud proofs yet, because Base is still the second most used chain probably after Solana. So at a certain point, do users actually care about decentralization? I would say the astute users care who actually want long-term incentives, but the users that are trading meme coins in peak bull markets don't really care. So I think paying attention to what the market wants in the short term and delivering a product that users care about, and while at the same time building long-term product strategies is important instead of just focusing long-term on being Ethereum aligned or theoretical possibilities.
Yeah, there's probably a sufficient level of decentralization that's acceptable in the current landscape of things. I think if you have a single one point of failure managed by one man, then obviously that probably wouldn't fly. But we use Telegram trading bots almost all the time to ape shit coins at the moment, and no one cares. But obviously, if you're trying to build a chain, it's more optimal to have some degree of decentralization. But it is a road that will eventually overcome, and there are a lot of solutions being built right now. We will have fraud proofs. There are interactive fraud proofs on Arbitrum. These are going to come to more of the rollups as a service types of systems eventually. Yeah, we'll get there.
So I believe there one thing about decentralization, right now you trade on Base or even it's a single sequencer because it's Base. If it's a Rushi rollup, probably we don't really want to trade on it, right?
What?
Yeah, because
More rugged, I
That's
swear.
crazy.
the thing is you don't know it's a real Rushi or it's a fake one. Even there's a floor proof or like sort of ZK proof, but all the nodes run by them. So that's why, like, when we say about this decentralization, sometimes it's really not just about security.
So that's why the social consensus
Yeah,
matters.
social consensus.
So I don't have social consensus. Is that what you're saying? You're saying Brian Armstrong is more social? Yeah, I would agree.
Depends on how many followers you have on Twitter.
That's like
You can
5K.
easily buy
He's getting
many
there, he's getting
followers.
there. Getting there.
Yeah.
Give it like another year. You can bridge to multi-sig.
Do you have
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's the perception of decentralization and the desire that they'll get there in the future, and whether that comes from social consensus or technology, like users care, they just trust at the time being.
I'm gonna AltLayer and launch a Rushi chain and prove you wrong.
But probably another Rushi. Yeah, not this one.
All right, so wow, modularity is certainly a trending topic. So there is also other criticism again. So like Kyle Samani, a partner at Multicoin Capital, has written that modular blockchains are overrated and lists like 7 reasons for that. So he believes the largest hidden cost of modular systems is the increased complexity in development processes, and that modularity alone does not improve the throughput. What is your perspective like on these criticism, and also what do you think is like the shortcomings?
I think it's fairly true that modular systems do bring additional complexity for both users and developers, but I think that's just because of how nascent modularity has been. I think if you look at systems like Cosmos itself, they are extremely complex still from a user's perspective, and when we get to the state where we have thousands of rollups in the future and you have the belief that every one of these rollups is going to be a new application, yeah, we're going to have new systems built for users to be able to bind these modular networks together to ensure that you still have like a one seamless experience across them all. I think we are getting towards that state. If you look at things like Layer 0 and Hyperlane and IBC, or teams like Skip, which are kind of like the plumbers of IBC across Cosmos, we're starting to see these systems become a lot more interwoven. And I think eventually we will overcome this problem where when you do have thousands of blockchains, you can still have a one-chain user experience for the end user's perspective.
I think he's missing one most important factor in the real world industry. It's about the diversity. It's not possible to have just one system to rule or host all the applications in the end. So, for example, like in this panel, we have all different execution layers, right? That really means like there are a lot of developers, they probably don't want to write Solidity smart contracts. They want to try out probably Go, like sort of move, and also this Rust. And the diversity is very, very important. If you look at the existing like sort of internet application, right? Even mobile applications. If you look at the backend system, they are not just in one programming language. Like they are in C, C++, Rust, Go, Python, even JavaScript or TypeScript. So the diversity is very, very important. Basically, it opens the sort of the door for all different developers in different industries to join this crypto world. So the diversity is very important. On the other side, it's about the diversity of the applications. So we are handling a lot of the clients and partners from different industry, from gaming, social, AI, DeepIn, and also DeFi protocols. So what they want, they basically around these customizations. They want sub-second block time. They want this kind of native gas. Some of them want zero gas. And a lot of them really want, like, can you provide us some very customized account abstraction wallet at this chain level? And all these things won't be possible on a single chain. So the diversity from all different angles can really determine in the end how it looks like for the crypto industry.
Yeah, because you just mentioned like so today Ethereum seems to be underperforming, and one perspective is that modular projects like Celestia are decoupling from Ethereum, with many projects no longer relying on Ethereum's DA for so-called legitimacy. So, so do you think like is the rise of the modular narratives like a boom or a blow to the Ethereum ecosystem?
There's 3 projects here building rollups that do settle to Ethereum still. So I think we're all still pretty much in the camp that Ethereum has its place. Maybe it's just not going to be the execution layer that we think it is. But there are still very many aspects of it that we can export to use within other networks. Primarily that being its security. That's why we've been seeing the rise of things like EigenLayer, being able to tap into the security power of Ethereum, restake that ETH, and use it to secure new modular networks like all 4 of us here.
It's also tough to say that the price of ETH is any correlated to, the net fees that it's able to be harvested by ETH. Like MEV, total amount of MEV plus total amount of actual transaction volume, and ETH paid in transaction volume are burned through 1559 minus issuance. Absolutely zero correlation with the price.
So I believe there's something we're missing here is about the correlation between the price and also the adoption. If we're looking at the adoption of Ethereum, I believe along with our different rollups and rollup stacks, we are onboarding more and more applications, not just on the DeFi side, but also gaming, social, and AI and DeepIn. So these applications, I believe, compared to a few years ago, now they really come into the real life. I mean, there are different rollups, L2s or L3s. And even we look at the performance, right? If we look at this emission and also inflation of Ether, right? I believe it's still ultrasound at the moment. And basically, it burns more fees than sort of like emit more ethers. But in the end, I believe it really depends on sort of what kind of factors we are looking at the moment. If it's around these applications, small application and mass adoptions, I definitely believe Ethereum is on the right track.
Yeah, it's about the prevalence and the mind share that ETH has as money and as core kind of core, like the canonical asset in all our execution layers, right? You guys are using ETH as gas, I presume. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So as the modularity infrastructure becomes more refined and it's becoming faster to deploy a new blockchain using tools like Cosmos SDK or OP Stack, leading to a growing number of application projects involving L1, L2 chains. So therefore, many people joke that there are nowadays more infrastructure projects than applications. Do you think this trend of app chains would change?
Yeah, there are a lot more infrastructure projects than applications, but it's because the applications that care about, they are on infrastructure that is not scalable. People don't care about the vast majority of infrastructure that's deployed. The vast majority of block space in existence is worthless.
So I believe because right now we are at the beginning, I'm not sure some of you really agree about the point that at the beginning of bull market, typically in the bear market, investor or VCs, they don't really want to invest in applications, to be honest. And so in that case, so far we couldn't see a lot of application which started 1 or 2 years ago. And once the market continues with at this pace, I believe this year we already see a lot of applications, and probably by early next year we can see there's sort of a booming of all the different applications. And as you mentioned, right, for the past few years, the infrastructure probably not that scalable, and which is not that usable for retail applications. But right now, even for the OP Stack, Arbitrum, Orbe, and Polygon CDK, they are at this stage relatively mature. And it's quite straightforward to onboard all the applications via these rollup providers like us or the other sort of panelists. So in that case, basically it's first we need have the applications with good funding from the VCs. At the same time, the infrastructure should be ready for them to really scale their business logic with tons of thousands users, and also with super high throughput and super low transaction fees.
Yeah, I think we'll see the rise of these applications over the next few months. A lot of this infrastructure is now there, and then there's still a decent amount of infrastructure that needs to come in terms of like tying these individual modular networks together so that we don't have the end experience of explicitly bridging around all of these chains, which would make these app chains virtually unusable for the vast majority of audiences. And I think we're starting to be at that stage where that infrastructure also exists. And I think over the next 6 months, we will start to see these applications show up as they've been building for the past few months.
I think app chains is the perfect middle ground because you want to create an ecosystem that if you're an app, you want to have TVL, you want to have users, but you also want to have a network that can power future applications. So an app chain is a good middle ground where you can launch a chain, have your own application, get users, similar to what Avo is doing, and then eventually be an ecosystem which can demand higher valuations, which is what most people want.
For example, we have Initia's public testnet dropping later this month. We've announced 5 different app chain teams that we've been working with over the past 3 months to help build out their products, and later this month you can try out all of them. So the apps are coming for sure.
They're a good example where they actually have interesting applications, and so they need to build infrastructure, right? If you don't have any applications on your app chain ecosystem, what's the point?
Exactly.
Okay, I've been also it's been quite a buzz within the crypto world nowadays, and I've been hearing so much great news about your projects, fundraising, product updates, or so. So looking forward, what major milestones or objectives does your project aim to achieve in the next year, next 1 year or 2, and also how do you see your project contributing to the broader evolution of the Web3 ecosystem?
I think we're focused on security. Every year there's 4.5 billion lost on Ethereum and traditional EVM apps. And our main focus is, yes, you want high throughput applications, you want low frequency trading and stuff, or high frequency trading. But what we're really focused on in our niche is how we can make smart contracts as secure as possible, baking formal verification into runtime. And we're doing a lot of sequencer monitoring as well to essentially censor bad transactions in the mempool.
Yeah, for us, we all know that this early morning, EigenLayer launched their mainnet for the basically for themselves and also EigenDA. On our side, for the next few months, probably also next year, our main focus is really around to launch these REST rollups. Basically, it composed of 3 features: one, decentralization of this verification, fast finality, and also the decentralized sequencing. We are already onboarding a bunch of the big projects. Like last week, we launched this L2 for Exterior, heavily backed by FunPlus and Binance, and later also CyberConnect and some other DeFi protocols. We believe when the applications, when we help them to launch this rollup, right? Definitely not just the rollup itself. We also want to provide this extra decentralization and also security, and plus this staking mechanism for them. And we believe for the next few months and also next 1 or 2 years, with this more decentralization and security, we can share from this EigenLayer and the Ethereum can basically push all the application rollups to another stage. Yeah.
We're going to do some very interesting things to the Solana validator. And we're going to have some very interesting research. So look out for that.
Yeah, and we have public testnet coming up later this month, and then hopefully mainnet within a couple of months. I think the infrastructure that we've built is now basically finished. You can build unique application rollups with the Cosmos SDK, as well as using EVM, MoveVM, or WASM VM on top. So pick your favorite smart contract for your application. And then I think there's some work that we have to do still within the product side of things on how we can actually bind all of these rollups on top of Initia together to create a fundamentally better user experience.
Cool. Thanks for sharing such exciting news with us. So this is going to be my last question. So as we near the end of our discussion, could you share with us the most significant insights or experience you've gained from this trip to Hong Kong, whether it's a new perspective on the technology, a memorable encounter, or an unexpected discovery? We're eager to hear about that.
Bitcoin layer 2s are a thing now. I don't know what it is. I don't really know how it works, but I guess it's bullish.
Restaking. I believe like with the midnight of EigenLayer and bunch of AVS, I feel like for the next few months, everything is really about restaking and how you delegate your ETH to multiple like sort of AVS or system to secure their services and also earn extra use.
I think the coolest thing that I learned while I was in Hong Kong was that my good friend Terry joined Eclipse. Makes it a lot more bullish in my mind.
Good thing that I learned at Hong Kong is that Initia is launching public testnet with 5 Minitias in the next month. Extremely exciting.
Let's go.
Get a room.
All right, thank you for sharing with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for our panelists here today. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for moderating.
Thank you.